The year is 2000. We all remember, right? Widespread power outages, people dying in hospitals, mass hysteria, nuclear power plants on the brink of explosion. Well, that's what NBC was kind of pushing for with their made-for-TV movie called Y2K, the movie. This thing aired November 21st, 1999, like a little over a month before everything was about to go down. This movie starts December 30th, 1999. They follow this government agency, which is supposed to be keeping track of all this Y2K stuff. And they're keeping an eye on every time zone as it hits Y2K so they can predict what's going to happen in the US. Now, the main character is this guy, Nick, who acts like Jack Bauer. He's got a wife who works in a hospital. Kelly, this rebellious teenage daughter that's friends with hackers because, that's a 90s thing. And this stupid-ass kid who's obsessed with googly eyeglasses. That's literally the only character trait this kid has, like, the entire movie. So right off the bat, I'm judging this movie because this radio impersonation in Washington, D.C. is ridiculously bad. I mean, listen to this.
Lincoln, he wrote the Gettysburg Address on the back of an envelope. No computer. Hell, we even won World War II without any computers. So...
It's like a radio person personality, like, good morning to you. How about that traffic? Wow, that's crazy. I mean, maybe it's just because I do this stuff all the time, and maybe it sounded like that in the 2000s, and, I didn't live in Washington, D.C., so maybe I'm judging it a little bit too much. All right, so I know the reason why you're watching this because you want to know what NBC thought was going to go down on Y2K, right? The worst possible situations.
There are over 30 billion computer chips embedded in everything from coffee machines to cars to jumbo jets and nuclear reactors. We've done thousands of tests and simulations, but simulations are guesses.
Simulations are just that. They're guesses. They then set up stuff between the dad and everything, showing an idea of, all right, well, what's the relationship between the dad and the daughter? And check out this IM conversation. Like, what program ever looked like that back then? I mean, everyone was pretty much using AIM, ICQ, Yahoo Messenger. I mean, it doesn't even look like that today. Coming in, like, letter by letter. I mean, that's kind of cool stuff, but... It's one of those things that the producers are out of touch with everything. They probably saw a few things on, like, the Today Show or whatever about, like, oh, kids are using IM these days. So they have some graphics team put it together, and this is what they thought it looked like. So anyway, so this guy's having a conversation with his daughter, and she wants to hang out with her hacker friends, Chaos and Clipper. I mean, could you not come up with a better name than Chaos and Clipper? So one of the best things about this entire movie is that NBC stations across the country were getting backlash for this because they didn't want to scare people with it, which, I mean, that's the whole purpose of it. I mean, I was reading on a ZDNet article from back then that, like, almost all the commercials that ran during it were trying to sell you, like, stockpiles of food and gold and all that kind of stuff when inevitably the world ends. So, I mean, they kind of killed it in that sense, but... They ended up running this disclaimer on the bottom of the screen. Check this out. It's like, hey, we're about to do some serious fear-mongering about the year 2000, but this stuff probably won't happen. I mean, it could happen. I'm not going to say will or won't, but there's a chance, possibly, but we're not saying it's going to happen, so don't freak out. But then again, I mean, we don't know. And, of course, all the stuff did happen, and I'm glad that all of us watched this back in the year 1999. So anyway, we're like 15 minutes into this 2-hour made-for-TV movie, and all of a sudden, the first time zone has hit midnight. So clearly, at 12:01, at least they waited a minute, one of those planes completely malfunctions, and just in case you couldn't tell this thing hit the ground, I mean, I thought it was like one of those, oh, not a big deal explosions until the second one hit, and then... So now that all the different time zones are hit, I mean, there's no power in parts of Sydney, there's issues in China, all the different red X's on the screen here, they show Paris's countdown to midnight, and everything's going okay until, of course, the power goes out because their big issue is that they're worried about all these different power plants having a cascading issue where one goes out, then the next one goes out, and then all hell breaks loose. And again, put yourself in the shoes of the people who are watching this a month before Y2K happens. You're like, okay, I'm freaking out a little bit. I mean, I'm feeling anxious watching it right now. And 21 years later, I know everything went okay. So anyway, now we've gotten to America, and this is when it gets good. We're in Times Square. This one guy proposes to his girlfriend. This is like a random couple, by the way, that we follow a few times throughout the movie. She says, yes, I think. In a freaking horse-drawn carriage. I mean, you gotta say yes at that point, right? And then, of course, the power goes out. And I'm feeling kind of bad for this guy because you don't want a proposal to go bad like that. It's like I'm thinking years later, their kids ask him like, oh, well, how did dad propose to you? Well, it was this beautiful horse-drawn carriage. And then we had to outrun this angry mob as the world was ending. So earlier in the movie, we meet this super paranoid guy.
Well, call me paranoid, but I've been following that Y2K bug. We could all be living in the dark ages.
All of a sudden, now that all the stuff's going down, he's watching the countdown on TV. He's thinking to himself, you know what? Called it. And you know there is somebody at home who's like that super paranoid person. We all know the super paranoid people who think that all these things are going on that aren't really going down in the world, who are like, see this guy on TV here? He gets it. This is why I got the bomb shelter and the years of food at my house. Maybe you should stop making fun of me. So now we got another plane having issues, but at least this time it has nothing to do with the actual plane itself, with the Y2K stuff. Because remember the whole cascading failure issue? Well, now it's affecting airports because apparently airports don't have backup generators. You think, oh, the planes don't need to land. And they were supposed to have had all the planes grounded, except for this dumbass. I mean, look at this guy, right? What an idiot. I guess he missed a plane. So this plane is now trying to land. There's no lights on the ground. This is actually the one brilliant thing of the entire movie. Nick, which, by the way, looks like an older Cody Co. I mean, look at that resemblance. This guy decides to take all these different emergency vehicles and line them up along the sides of the runways with their lights on to create like a faux runway. And as you can see here, with the terrible CGI, it clearly worked. And everybody was happy, a little shooken up. Look at how proud this dude is. You know, good for him. So now we get into the meat of the movie. This nuclear reactor. This is what the whole thing revolves around. One of the computers malfunctioned because of Y2K. So now this reactor is overheating. So it gets to the point where they have to evacuate everybody because, you know, if a nuclear power plant explodes, it's bad news. So we check in with the National Guard, evacuate him, my buddy here, you know, the guy with the barbed wire fence and everything. So they try to get into his property, but he won't let him get in. So they have to bolt cut the fence. So clearly what he put up there did nothing. If it took one bolt cutter to get in, why even bother putting up all the barbed wire on the outside of it? But anyway, so they break in. They tell the guy he's got to leave. And of course he doesn't want to because he's got his little bomb shelter. He's got all his supplies and everything. So he shoots up this warning shot. The warning shot surprises this one guy who falls on the ground. His buddy thinks it wasn't a warning shot, and he actually shot him, and they killed the dude.
Just fired in the air. I thought you were hit.
I'm not going to lie, when I watched that, I yelled at the screen because I did not expect it, and I was actually kind of rooting for the dude. So, well, now we check back at the hospital where Kelly, the daughter, is supposed to be hanging out with the stupid googly eyes kid. But Kelly ended up sneaking out to go hang out with her hacker friends. Mom finds out, and she's not too happy. Now you're wondering, how does the mom know where the daughter went? Is it maybe like a computer conversation or something? Because they are hacker friends. No, it's a pamphlet. She left in the room. I thought it was one of those common sense things that, like, if you're going to be trying to sneak out and leave, maybe you don't leave a note saying exactly where you're going to go. So now our hero, old Cody Co, has got a plan. He sneaks into the building to turn a couple valves because nobody else thought to do this, to try to shut off whatever's going on or just like open up some water flow or something. And after he does this little tappity tap of this little pipe, he realizes there's an issue with the water flow. So he books it to this water pump building, and the whole thing just explodes. But of course, the guy is totally fine. He's a little shooken up, but he's okay. Now we meet up with Kelly, who's been hanging out with her hacker friends, and she hears the nuclear siren going off. Everybody's fleeing, so they figured, all right, we gotta get out of here. So one of the hacker dudes grabs a brick, chucks it in an old lady's window, and hijacks a car. Eventually, Dollar Store Jack Bauer realizes if they do this massive explosion at a nuclear power plant, that it'll open up all the water valves and it'll be able to flow in, cool down the reactor, and will save the whole world.
You can't blow stuff up here. This is a nuclear power plant. Watch.
So they're scrambling to get everything ready as the computer counts down the amount of time until everything explodes. Why was that one Y2K compliant and the one that's in charge of the water valves wasn't. Anyway, obviously, they get it all done in time. They do a little booming thing, and explodes. Water starts flowing into it. And conveniently, at the same time, Mom finds Kelly. They reunite. Then they meet up with the dad. There's a little smoocher that happens. So we cut to Los Angeles. There's a newsroom. The power goes out. They can't communicate with the newsroom. So guess what happens next?
I'm not getting anything. I think something's wrong in L.A.
No. Really, guess what happens next? Because that's the end of the movie. It just ends. Because the West Coast doesn't matter. How are we supposed to plan for Y2K without having an end of the movie, right? So that's Y2K the movie, which they ended up renaming after Y2K to Countdown to Chaos. What did we learn? Well, we learned that computers suck, and we're all going to die January 1st, 2000. So just party like it's 1999. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give that big old thumbs up, a big old tappity taps. It seriously helps out the algorithm. I know you're probably thinking like, maybe I'll just hit it later, or somebody else will tap it. No, please do it. I'm looking at you right now. And if you really like this video, make sure you subscribe. New videos every year. What has it been, 6 months or a year since the last video? I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while. Also, big shout out to YouTube for the new plaque here. We hit a new milestone in subscribers. I think we're up to, what does it say? 4 subscribers. So thank you, all 4 of you. We're really killing it right now. Also, huge shout out to Joseph Roman. I got the link in the description if you want to check out the full movie, because honestly, it was a pretty good movie, and I think you'll like it too. So check out a couple more videos up here on the screen. And again, if you haven't liked and subscribed, just take a second, please, and thank you.